I want to welcome each of you here today as you come to worship and praise God. I pray that you'll be uplifted and you'll feel the presence of Jesus in your life by the time you leave here. I want to take you on a little trip. Imagine, if you will, being in Jericho one day when Jesus came to town. And you have a great need. Maybe it's physical. And you had heard how Jesus had worked miracles for other people. He had done signs for others and healed them. What would you do? What would you do? Would you try to get to him? Would you try to find a way to get yourself to Jesus? Now imagine that you're one of the ones with Jesus. That you're one of the ones leading the procession. That you're one of the ones that are bringing Jesus into town. And this blind man calls out to him. What would you do? How would you react? What would you say to this blind man that's crying out to Jesus? Friends, I want you to know that Jesus is a gift from God that is meant to be shared. Jesus is for all. So the question I want to ask this morning, not only pertaining to Jesus' time with his disciples in that time, but those of us that call ourselves disciples today. Do the disciples of Jesus always do a good job of presenting him to others? If you open your Bibles to Luke chapter 18 and verse 35, it tells us that Jesus was approaching Jericho. A blind man was sitting by the road begging. Now, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. He's been up in the areas of Galilee and Samaria. And he was probably staying on the borders of these areas. He was probably traveling the road that goes along the Jordan or in that general vicinity. And as he's traveling down this particular road, it would bring him right into Jericho. Now, there would be a reason this blind man would be sitting there. It would be a busy road. It would be somewhere that he could maybe collect a lot. That he would be able to come into contact with a lot of people. And so it was a good place to be. And here comes Jesus. Now I want you to think about the excitement that Jesus coming to town would cause. I mean, if Jesus came to our town, do you think people would be excited? Do you think at least those who call themselves his disciples would do whatever it takes to get to see him? Would we go out and would we line the streets? Would we crowd one another so we could get a better position to see Jesus? Would we, like Zacchaeus, maybe climb a tree to get a better view of him? Would we bring our people, our friends that really need Jesus and do whatever it takes to get to him, like the 4 friends that lowered their paralytic friend through the roof? Would we do whatever it takes to get to Jesus? You see, when Jesus was entering Jericho, it created a stir. It created excitement. I'm sure this man was used to hearing the normal sounds of the city, the normal comings and goings, the commotions that go along with that life and that type of culture. But something about this was different. Something about what he was hearing now was different from what he'd ever heard before. In Luke 18 and verse 36, He says, now hearing a crowd going by, he began to inquire what this was. You see, as Jesus is going along, a crowd has gathered. And we know that happens. Remember when Jesus was touched by the woman who had had the issue of blood for 12 years. It said the crowds were pressing on all sides. The Bible tells us that Jesus created such a crowd and commotion among people that it got to the point he could no longer publicly enter a city. So he tried to stay out of them as much as possible. So it created a commotion, it created the crowd, and it got the attention of this blind man. And I think as this blind man inquires, what's going on? What's happening? It gives us an example. It demonstrates that we need to be excited about Jesus. I mean, the people were excited. There was something in the way that they spoke, in the way that they acted, that made this blind man think something exciting is happening, and I want to know what it is. You know, think about it. Do we live our lives in such a way that people wonder what it is that's going on? Yeah, I know. Some people might say, what's up with that guy? What's going on with him? But I mean in a good way. Do our lives demonstrate that we have total faith in God? That we trust Him? That we trust Jesus? That we've given our life to Him? That no matter what's going on, we know that we have salvation? No matter what's happening, I mean, I'm not saying we're always going to be happy and, smiling and laughing. There's going to be things in this life that cause us to get sad and to be upset. But friends, nothing in this world should be able to take away the joy we have in Jesus Christ. That's down deep. That's rooted. So when circumstances happen, when things happen that can make us sad, when things happen that we don't look at as good, we can reach down and we can go to that place and we can find that joy. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when people see us, when things may be falling apart around us. They may be able to look at us and say, what do you have that I don't? How can you stand there so calm? How can you be so sure? Because my faith is in Jesus Christ. My faith is in Him. You know, when people see us treat others, will they recognize that our life is different? Will they recognize that we have a different love than the world has? I mean, look at Luke 18 and verse 37. The crowd told the blind man that Jesus of Nazareth was passing by. You see, when people ask us, what's the excitement? Jesus of Nazareth. He is what was causing the commotion in Jericho. He's what was causing the excitement. And He's what causes us to be excited. Because He's in our lives every day. We're in the presence of Jesus all the time. And we should be excited. When we come into worship, we should worship with excitement. With love. With knowing that Jesus died on the cross for me. Jesus has the power to deal with all of my problems. Jesus has promised me He will never forsake me. Friends, that should cause excitement in our lives. And when people ask us, we can say it's Jesus of Nazareth. But see, the question is, are we always ready and willing to openly express our love for Jesus? I believe that this is one of the biggest roots of all the problems we have in our country, that there are a lot of people that say, I believe in Jesus, and they might even say, I love Jesus, but they've not taken the opportunity to stand for Him when they should. We have people in public office that claim to be Christians, but when it comes time to stand for what is right, for what is biblical, for what is truth, they fail to do it. And it's not just people in public office, but it's people in a lot of different walks of life. They fail to stand for Jesus. When I say Harvard University, Yale University, Columbia University, Penn, what do you think of? What do they all have in common? You'll say they're all Ivy League universities. Yes, they are. They are Ivy League universities. They are institutions of higher education, and they carry prestige. When people say, I graduated from one of these universities, people are impressed. Because you have to be smart to get in there. You have to work hard to get through. It's impressive. But you know one other thing they all have in common? When they were started, they were established to train preachers and missionaries. That's why they existed. They were teaching people how to teach others the Bible. They were teaching missionaries to go into the world and take the gospel. They were training preachers. That's why they existed. However, if you go on those campuses now, you're going to be lucky to find anything remotely resembling Christianity. You'll probably be looked at funny if you even mention Jesus. Why? Because throughout the centuries, throughout the years, people have failed to stand up for Jesus. People have failed to show that they love Jesus in such a way that they trust Him so much that they will stand for Him in the face of any adversary. And that's what's happened to our country. Established on the principles of the Bible, historically proven. And look how far away we are now. Because people have failed to stand up for their love for Jesus. And Jesus gave us a very plain warning about this in Matthew chapter 10, verses 32 and 33. Therefore, everyone who confesses me before men, I will also confess him before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father who is in heaven. It's plain and simple. Stand up for Jesus, He stands up for you. Don't stand up for Jesus, He won't stand up for you. But He went to the cross, and He paid a debt that we could never pay. He took away our sin by shedding His blood on the cross at Calvary. So in reality, He stood up for us right there. He stood up to sin and death and conquered it. And now He leaves it up to us to stand up for Him. But He says in the end, if you haven't stood up for me, if you've denied me, I'll deny you before my Father in heaven. Well, with this news that Jesus of Nazareth is coming to town, the blind man cries out. Luke chapter 18 and verse 38 says, and he called out saying, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. I want you to pay close attention of how the blind man addresses Jesus. When he asked what was going on, they said, Jesus of Nazareth is coming. And when he cries out to Jesus, he says, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. This tells me that he recognized Jesus for who He was. He recognized Jesus as the Messiah. Somebody had been spreading the word about Jesus and who He was. This blind man had heard it. And he believed that this Jesus that was coming into his presence right then was the Messiah. And not only that, he believed that he had the power to do whatever he asked him to do. He had the power to help him. Well, again, people must have been talking. People had been talking about the things that Jesus had done. And so this blind man heard about the power. Can you imagine him maybe sitting by the road begging day after day, hearing these stories and hearing about Jesus and thinking, wow, I wish I could meet him. I wish I would have the chance to approach him. And here it is. The day has come. And he cries out to him, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. He's excited. He's excited about Jesus being within grasp, if you will. But what I want you to notice next is the reaction of those that are with Jesus. Luke chapter 18 and verse 39, those who led the way were sternly telling him to be quiet. But he kept crying out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. You see, the disciples, they didn't want this man to bother Jesus. They were probably telling him, you just need to sit down and be quiet. He don't have time for you. See, they were treating Jesus like people treat celebrities today. They have their bodyguards or their posses, and they try to keep people away from them because they're special. They're more important than you. You see, Jesus never personally felt that with people. He never personally felt, I'm more important than anybody. I mean, look at the people that he dined with, what would be considered the dregs of society. He told the Pharisees, it's not the healthy that need a doctor, it's the sick. And so that's who people came to Jesus. That's who he wanted to hang with. And so when this man cries out, the disciples of Jesus, he don't have time for you. Be quiet. It says they sternly were telling him to be quiet. Jesus has time for you. And I want you to know that. Jesus wants you to call out to him. Jesus wants to be in your life. I mean, think about this a minute. Why would these with Jesus, who supposedly know him best, tell this man to get away? I mean, there was already a crowd and a commotion, so why rebuke this one man? This one man who was calling out to Jesus. This one man who had a great need. And he knew that Jesus could meet that need. They had to feel that this one blind man was not worth the time of Jesus. You know, the apostles struggled big time with sharing Jesus. They thought Jesus belonged to them. John came back to Jesus one time as recorded in Luke chapter 9 and verse 49. Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name. And we tried to prevent him because he does not follow along with us. You know, in essence, John was telling Jesus, because he's not one of us 12, we told him to quit. Because he doesn't belong to us. And Jesus rebuked him in the next verse and told him, you know, let him do it. Let him do it, because if he's doing good works in my name, he's not going to go out and speak evil about me. Just because he's not one of the 12 doesn't mean he's not important. Doesn't mean he doesn't belong to me. You know, and I think the apostles struggled with this because they didn't really understand the mission of Jesus. Jesus said that he came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. The apostles struggled with that because they were thinking of an earthly kingdom. They were thinking that they were going to be somebody. And they didn't want to take the chance that anybody that wasn't one of their 12, one of that group, superseded them, got in ahead of them. So they struggled with sharing Jesus. But again, in Luke 18 and verse 34, it says, "But the disciples understood none of these things that Jesus was telling them. The meaning of this statement was hidden from them, and they did not comprehend the things that were said, because their minds were in the wrong place." Just like Jesus, when he rebuked Peter, after Peter made the great confession that you are the Lord, you're the Christ, you're the Son of God. And Jesus started telling them about his death, and Peter took him aside and said, "Lord, you need to quit saying things like that. You're bothering the people, especially us 12. And Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan, because your mind is on the things of man, not on the things of God." See, and that's where the apostles' mind was most of the time, on the things of man. Oh, they loved Jesus, and I think they believed in Jesus, but they believed in him as a powerful political leader, not as the Savior of the world. And this was tough for them. Finally, Jesus addresses the blind man. In Luke chapter 18 and verse 40, it says, "And Jesus stopped and commanded that he be brought to him. And when he came near, he questioned him." Now, how do you think those leading the way felt? I mean, they're telling this blind man, just sit down and be quiet. Just get out of the way. He doesn't have time for you. And now Jesus stops and says, "Bring the man here. Bring him here." And not only does he come near to Jesus, Jesus talks to him. Jesus questioned him. I like the way Mark records what happens after Jesus says, "Bring him here." Mark chapter 10 verse 49 says, Jesus stopped and said, "Call him here." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, stand up. He's calling for you." Boy, they changed their tune, didn't they? Once they realized that Jesus did have time for him, that Jesus did want to speak to him, "Come. Stand up. Take courage. He's calling for you." You see, this is the attitude we always need to possess in our lives for people around us. Take courage. Stand up. He's calling for you, because Jesus is calling for all people. His word reaches out to all. His grace is a gift available to anyone who will reach out and take it. And we need to encourage people to take it, not tell them, "Get back out of the way. Stand down." Take courage. Stand up. He's calling for you. We should be drawing people to Jesus. We should be dragging them to him. You see, what our lives should reflect that we're excited about what Jesus has done for us, and he can do what he's done for us for you. He can take care of any problem that you have. He can get you over any obstacle that you face. But take courage and stand up, because he's calling for you. Luke chapter 18, in the first part of verse 41, Jesus says, "What do you want me to do for you?" Now this may seem like a strange question. The man is blind. It's obvious. He's got a need. He's got a need, and Jesus can meet it. And this man knew that Jesus could meet it. That's why he cried out. But Jesus says, "What do you want me to do for you. Jesus revealed that there is nothing he cannot accomplish throughout his ministry. And I'm sure this blind man had heard of how Jesus had healed others. And he had faith that Jesus could do the same for him if he could just get to him. There are scores of books written by people who tell of great things that Jesus has done in their life. Does that encourage you? Do you ever pick one of those up and read it and think, wow, now I can go on, now I understand. Maybe it draws you a little closer to Jesus. Maybe it deepens your faith. Maybe it helps you understand that some people had it worse off than I did. Now look where they're at. If Jesus could do that for them, imagine what he can do for me. See, this blind man knew that Jesus had what it took to take care of the problem that he had. And now Jesus is standing before him saying, what do you want me to do for you? And the blind man answers him, Lord, I want to regain my sight. Plain and simple. Lord, I want to regain my sight. See, that's what I want. Because giving him back his sight would make him a useful member of society once again. He could probably go to work. He could probably earn his keep. He wouldn't have to beg. His reputation would be changed. He could become a whole different person. Lord, I want to regain my sight. I mean, there was no beating around the bush. He just flat out said, I want my sight. I mean, think about that a minute. Have you ever asked someone, what is it you want me to do for you? And they might say, well, there's really nothing. There's not. I mean, if somebody asks you what you want them to do for you, and you've got something they can do, tell them. That's what the blind man did. Especially when it comes to Jesus. If you have a need, take it to him. Don't beat around the bush. Don't wonder if he'll listen. He'll listen. Have courage and take it to him. Stand up and be bold and have faith. Look at verse 42 of Luke 18. And Jesus said to him, receive your sight. Your faith has made you well. See, I think it's interesting here that Jesus doesn't say, because I came through Jericho and you got into my presence, you've been healed. He didn't say, because I laid my hands on you, you've been healed. He didn't say, because I said some great prayer over you and chanted and all this other stuff, you're healed. He said, your faith has made you well. You had the faith that made you believe that I could do whatever it is you ask. Do you have the faith that this blind man had? The faith to take whatever it is to Jesus and know that he can heal you. And know that he has that power. The blind man then followed Jesus and he praised God and he caused others to do the same. He would be a walking book, if you will, of look at what Jesus has done for me. I was a blind beggar, now here I am. And he can help you too. So the question we need to ask ourselves, how do you present Jesus? Do you show that he has the power to meet the needs of everyone? Does your life reflect that you have the faith to take anything to him and that he can deal with it? He can overcome it? Do you try to keep people from getting to him because you don't want to share him? Or do you tell people, take courage, stand up, he's calling you? That's the way our lives should be every day. Stand up. Take courage. He's calling you. The way we present Jesus to others has eternal effects on us and on those around us. We make the decision of how we're going to present Jesus each day. So, what will you do in your life to present Jesus to others? That's the question. That's the question. Today, if you are here and you've never been immersed for remission of sins, let your faith lead you to that. Be baptized, come up out of the waters of baptism, a brand new creation. How does God take your sin away? I don't know. But I know by faith He does it. Christian, maybe you've been struggling with something. Maybe it is the way you present Jesus. Go to God and ask for courage and wisdom. Take it to Him and have Him touch your life. Ask Him for whatever it is you want. He has the power to give you what you need. Maybe you need the prayers of the church. Maybe you're struggling with something spiritual, something physical. And we know the prayers of the righteous are powerful and effective. So if you need to respond to God today, in whatever way, take this opportunity to come to God as we stand and as we sing.